In this 25th anniversary year of September 11th, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation continues to honor America's heroes. Heroes like Fire Lieutenant Michael Wells, who was inspired by 9/11 to serve his community. After 14 dedicated years of service, he lost his battle with occupational cancer, leaving behind his wife, Katie, and their 3 children. Tunnel to Towers honored Lieutenant Wells by paying off the family's mortgage in recognition of his sacrifices. Donate $11 monthly and amplify your impact with a car or land donation. Go to T2T.org.
Now let's do it. Give me about 10 minutes here with the great legal mind over at Fox News, and now with Sid Rosenberg, fave and regular on this show, my buddy Gregg Jarrett. Greg, good Wednesday morning, pal. How are you?
Hey, I'm fine, thanks. Happy to hear the tunes of one of my old favorite rock pop bands, Yes, who I saw in concert many years ago.
Very good, Greg. You know, usually people just know roundabout, but you just nailed that. That's very impressive.
Well, listen, I'm an old timer, and I love the old rock and roll.
Me too. I am all about classic rock. That's it. I don't like rap. Sorry. I don't like any of the new music. I'm classic rock. I do like the old ballads, like there's a station, Light FM, here in New York. Give me a little Diamond, Streisand, Manilow once in a while, but I'm all about classic rock. I'm right with you, Greg. Let's get to this Jim Comey story. Look, it's silly. They can't arrest him for this. And, you know, it's I hate Jim Comey. I hate him. And I do think he hates the president, and I do think he would not be upset if somebody actually murdered the president. I really believe that. But this is silly. But what it does for Todd Blanche is it says to President Trump, I'm going to be exactly what Pam Bondi wasn't, and that's why maybe instead of Zeldin or Pirro or Dillon, I'm the right guy for the job. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't disagree with your analysis. I think there's, some motivation there as you've described it. I think the legal question, if it ever gets to a jury, is pretty straightforward under the statute. Did Comey intend to threaten the life of the president? In other words, was it willful? Interestingly, the second charge against Comey, which is communicating it to the public electronically, that allows for a lesser standard of recklessly making a threat that, disregards the risk of violence. Now, the grand jury in North Carolina obviously thought this was a true threat. And, yeah, at trial, the standard of proof, as we know, beyond a reasonable doubt, is much higher than in a grand jury. However, don't discount the fact, Sid, that this case would be tried in the Eastern District of North Carolina, with which I'm quite familiar. It's predominantly conservative, and those trial jurors may see it the same way.
Oh, wow. So this is completely different than New York or Washington, D.C.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. A Democrat and a guy like James Comey, they get a get out of jail free card if it's in Washington, D.C. or Virginia. But this is North Carolina. It's the Eastern District. It's a very rural area out there, very conservative. So, it's a different dynamic. And, look, let's be honest. Comey's excuse is totally absurd. Gee whiz, I didn't know the meaning of 8647. Of course he did. But, this is what James Comey always does. When he gets caught engaging in wrongdoing, he feigns ignorance. He plays dumb. I've seen him do it over and over and over again in his testimony before Congress. But the truth is, he's a smart guy. He was the FBI director. He was deputy attorney general. He was U.S. attorney. He knows the law. He surely knows what that phrase is. I memean, the FBI is deeply experienced in coded messages calling for violence. So for Comey to say, I didn't know what that meant, right, is utterly ludicrous.
You're right. But I got to tell you, I'm not a lawyer like you or Comey. I'm married to a gorgeous lawyer. And a lot of my friends are lawyers, from you to Takapina to Idala to Dershowitz to Baez. I'm not a lawyer, but just kind of overseeing all these, looking at all these stories. It seems to me that the better case to be prosecuted than Comey is Letitia James. Why is she skating?
Yeah, it has been a tough road to hoe, and a lot of it is because judges have blocked the attempts to bring people like Letitia James and others who allegedly lied, and lied rather blatantly, on loans, mortgages, deceiving banks about their purpose and their intent.
Hold on 1 second. I know that you're trained to say allegedly, and you'll appreciate this, Greg. Many times on this show, I'll say something, and my wife, who listens every day, will say, will you please say allegedly? but the truth is, those are not allegations. She did lie on that piece of paper, or did she not?
Well, she says it's not an intentional deception or a lie, but rather a clerical mistake or a communications error between herself and whoever filled out the form.
Got it.
That, to me, is preposterous. But nevertheless, I still use the word allegedly, and you're right. Just like your wife, we're trained to be cautious in that regard.
It's smart, and I do it all the time. I have to come back from break sometimes and go, hey, by the way, what I just said, that's an allegation. I want to get to Jimmy Kimmel. Kimmel did something that was grotesque. It doesn't matter that it was a couple of nights before. He's trying to explain it away. He was talking about age, not assassination. It doesn't matter. It was in poor taste. He gets no ratings. His revenue is down. I have no idea why ABC is loyal to the guy, other than ABC likes the fact that their talent bashes President Trump. Now, look, you know this, Greg. Nobody pushes the First Amendment more than I do, okay? I'd be an idiot to want any restrictions on the First Amendment the way I talk on my show. But when I read this morning that the FCC may be looking into doing something with ABC's license, it made me happy. What are your thoughts on that legally?
Yeah, look, I agree with you that Jimmy Kimmel should be kicked off the air because he's no good at his job, not because of what he said necessarily about Melania Trump, which was deplorable. And you have to have hideous judgment to say such a thing. So the fact that he's a guy possessed of poor judgment and seems riven with hate toward Trump, classic TDS syndrome. But most of all, he's not funny. He's not entertaining. He's not remotely interesting. He doesn't do interesting interviews. The guests are all stacked one way, and as a result, his audience share is abysmal. His ratings have been in the toilet for a long time, and how and why ABC sustains this and the affiliates haven't revolted is astonishing to me.
Yeah.
You want a good lead out from your local news with the nighttime, talk show, and that's just about the worst. So if I were an affiliate, I'd say, get rid of this knucklehead.
Yeah, I agree. I want to get to the shooting on Saturday, Greg. You were one of the many guests that was on Fox News Sunday morning, and I think you're terrific. You're great. And I thought you were great on Sunday. But there's a lot of questions, Greg, about the Secret Service. As I've been saying for a couple of days, I like Trump feel badly crushing his people. He actually returned my text Sunday morning, early the president. I said, thank God you're okay. And he said, yes, Sid, thank you for checking in. And the Secret Service did a great job. That's what President Trump texted me at 7:23 a.m. Sunday. But that doesn't stop people from just lambasting them. And look, they certainly did make some mistakes. And if they continue to operate like this, he's going to get killed one day. But they've gone 75 days without a paycheck. Here's the second thing. How about doing these events not in a hotel where there are thousands of guests walking around? So to me, the bigger issue than the Secret Service, Greg, was the venue.
Yeah, I agree. And, I've been to that venue for, I can't recall if it was for that event or similar event involving the president, because there have been different association dinners there where the president appears. And I've been going to these things since, the Reagan era. That was the first White House Correspondents' Dinner I went to. And I'm obviously dating myself. But, when I have gone, I don't go to them anymore. I hate them. There are a lot of self-important journalists who are patting themselves in the back and prancing and preening around. And it's nauseous stuff because most journalists are nauseous inherently. But, it's always worried me, that is a vulnerable venue. And I think the president is right to point out that his, under construction ballroom at the White House solves the problem. And I was happy to see, Rand Paul say he's going to introduce a bill to expedite the finished construction of the ballroom and cut through all the red tape. And of course, predictably, liberals sued the president over the whole thing. I was at the White House in November, and he was showing me the model of the ballroom and so forth, and it's going to be impressive, and it will be able to house with top security, all kinds of events, so that it won't have to take place at vulnerable venues like this one. And I think you're right. The president has to say, gee, thank you, Secret Service, for saving my life, because they protect him every day, every hour of every day. But, they made mistakes. There's no question about it, and they need better protocols.
That's the bottom line, better protocols. So just to wrap this up in a nice little bow like we always do, Greg, to return to the initial story, Jim Comey, I started off by saying it's kind of silly. You said, well, slow down a second. I get what you're saying, but especially that second charge. So if you're out there and you're hoping there is some retribution here, Jim Comey, you're saying all hope is not lost.
Yeah, I would say that. And look, it's not an easy case to bring against Comey for prosecutors. There are hurdles. First and foremost, he's going to claim free speech as a defense. Although, as I pointed last night out on Hannity, the Supreme Court has made it abundantly clear the First Amendment does not protect threats against the president. So, Comey's going to say, it was satire, hyperbole, a joking statement, which runs, of course, contrary to what he said at the outset when he said, I didn't know what it means. So, Comey's going to do a dance. I will say I happen to think prosecutors in the FBI have a lot more evidence against Comey than is identified in the 3-page indictment. The acting AG, Todd Blanche, referred to witnesses and documents. Do they contradict Comey's phony story? Maybe, and if so, James Comey is not as clever as he thinks.
Wow. Fantastic. I got to tell you, Greg, you come on every time. You're amazing. Not good, great. Thank you for these 10, 11 minutes this morning. As always, spectacular job.
All right, pal. Take care and play a little more Yes, okay? I love those guys.
Next time you're back, which I have a feeling will be very, very quickly, we'll get another Yes Classic for you. Greg Jarrett, thank you so much.
Attaboy, thanks.
All right, take care. I love that guy. I love him. Greg Jarrett, the brilliant legal mind from Fox News.
Thanks for listening to Sid and Friends in the Morning. You can hear Sid and Friends in the Morning weekday mornings at 6. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
This
This is Roger Stone with a serious warning for you. The U.S. dollar has lost 97% of its purchasing power since 1912. Your savings are exposed, and gold and silver remain the final hedge against currency devaluation, inflation, and ongoing economic uncertainty worldwide. So call 844-272-2428 now to get your free gold and silver guide from American Sovereign Bullion and learn how to protect your wealth with gold and silver. Call 844-272-2428 or visit dyingdollar.com. That's dyingdollar.com.